Okay, we'll give Manager Crafton a few minutes to join us here.
While we are waiting, President Ziegler, would you like me to share the agenda on the screen, or are you just looking at it on your own?
I think I have the latest version
Okay.
printed, so I should be good. But
There's Manager Crafton.
we're meeting remotely via Zoom. Hopefully our next meeting will be hybrid if all of our equipment comes in, which I believe we'll talk about later. So I think we'll need a roll call attendance. Attorney Smith, if you could handle that. Thank you.
Manager Crafton,
Present.
Manager Duval,
Present.
Manager Cook,
Present.
Manager Pedersen,
Present.
President Ziegler.
Present.
All managers present.
Okay, so I will call the meeting to order. It looks like it's 7:02. And the first thing on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Do we have any motions on this item?
I'll move the agenda as submitted. I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any questions or comments regarding the agenda?
Mr. President,
Manager Cook.
I would like to move to amend the agenda as presented in the following manner to move, I guess it would be the staff report, engineers report, and regulatory report, and put those all under, if I haven't messed up the numbering, I believe it would be item 5 for committee reports, and rename that as committee reports and staff reports. It seems to me to make sense to deal with them all at once. But given that, I think as with the other items, give people a time to be able to ask questions about them. But as far as accepting them, I think we should be able to accept them in one fell swoop, then have any appropriate discussion. So that's number one, proposed change. Then other proposed changes are to move items 7, D, E, F, and H to the consent agenda.
D, E, F, and H. Is that correct?
Yeah, let me go back again. I'm sorry, I have too many colors showing up here. Yes, it would be D, E, F, and H. The idea about the variance, the exception, and the permit, and then Bar Engineering's request. And then I apologize because I'd had the agenda already on a schedule, but I believe Administrator Jeffrey, you sent us something having to do with, what was it, 23066 or something like that?
The permit report?
Yeah, is that?
Yeah, I did not add that to the, I'm sorry, Manager Cook, I did not add that to the agenda. I'm thinking we can bring it forward at the November 16th meeting. Should be a relatively small item. Unless you're okay with me adding it, it would be nice to get that one put to rest. It's an after the fact permit.
Maybe it'd be best if we addressed it at the next next meeting, because if we have questions, I don't know that we go through that now.
That was my plan. So yeah, okay, thank you.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
President Ziegler?
Manager Cook, I'm sorry, Manager Crafton. Oops.
Yeah, I mean, if we're discussing or passing the exception and the variance, do we have to discuss that or vote on those separately?
That's a good question for legal.
Mr. President, managers, your normal practice is to have the board separately consider and act on a variance or an exception before acting on the permit. It is in your discretion. If all of you feel that you've reviewed it and all is in order and you agree with granting the variance and the exception based on the findings that are presented in the engineer's report, staff report, it's within your authority to deal with it as a single motion. But your practice normally is to take it up separately.
Okay,
Thank you,
President Ziegler?
Manager Crafton.
Yeah, so just to comment on that, no, I think that Engineer Sobiek did a good thorough job of explaining it all and laying it out. So I have no problems with having it on the consent agenda. I was just wanting to make sure we were doing things correctly.
Okay, any other comments, questions, or revisions on the agenda?
So, Mr. President,
Yes, Manager Duval.
so we're moving, I guess just to rephrase what we're moving here, what's been suggested to move. Move the staff or all the staff reports to the main or discuss new business. Was that it?
No, President Ziegler, managers, if I may, I'll go through the changes. Manager Cook proposed that we move the staff report, the engineer's report, and the regulatory report up to item 5 and have it be committee and staff report. And then all reports could be discussed and approved or accepted rather in one motion or one resolution.
Got it. Thank you.
Items D, E, F, and H are moved to the consent agenda to be addressed with resolution 23-66.
Thank you.
So just so I'm clear, item A was, oh, that's nothing anyway. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Mhm.
Any other questions or comments or clarifications needed on the agenda?
President Ziegler?
Manager Crafton.
So H was moved too, right?
That is correct. Move to consent.
Thank you.
Okay, if there's no other questions, can we have a roll call vote, Mr. Smith?
Mr. President, just for clarification, I know that Manager Cook moved these changes to the agenda. So it would either be seconded and voted on as an amendment, or if Manager Crafton and Manager Pedersen believe that they are in agreement with those changes, and then it would be amended by unanimous consent. So I guess I'd look to Manager Crafton and Pedersen, and then we can see which way to go.
I'm fine with the latter.
I'm fine with the changes as well.
Okay, then with that change by unanimous consent, on approving the agenda as revised, Manager Crafton,
Yes,
Manager Duval,
Yes.
Manager Cook,
Yes.
Manager Pedersen,
Yes.
President Ziegler.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, so the next item on the agenda is the matters of public interest. Welcome to the board meeting. Anyone may address the board on any matter of interest in the watershed. Speakers will be acknowledged by the president. Please come to the podium, state your name and address for the record. Please limit your comments to no more than 3 minutes. Additional comments may be submitted in writing. Generally, the Board of Managers will not take official action on items discussed at this time, but may refer the matter to staff for further report or direct that the matter be scheduled on a future agenda. Do we have any members of the public who wish to speak tonight?
Yes, President Ziegler, Mr. Rod Fisher raised his hand, as well as Marilyn.
Okay. Mr. Fisher, do you want to go first?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, board, and staff. I'm joined by Laura Kaufman, and we're coming from the newly formed Eden Prairie Duck Lake Association. And we're eager to see an update of our lake management plan and the apparent need for a budget approval by the board to have that update done by BAR. I understand currently that this will be on the agenda for December 21st workshop. And if that's not the case, we'd really appreciate any direction to support our goal. We have done, in the last year since we formed, we've done a tremendous amount of work to build the EPDLA legally and locally, to build membership and to set our goals with the input of that membership around the lake. So our goals, as best we can see, depend on a current lake management plan. And of course, we always thank you at the district and the board for supporting our lake. But we just want to make sure we're doing the right thing to move forward and get that lake management plan updated. So eagerly hoping for any feedback, others, activity, work, input that we should do to do that. And I think that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher. Did Mrs. Torkelson also have comments or questions?
Yeah. So I just wanted to say that I read the article in the Eden Prairie Local News about restoring and buying the 28 acres adjacent to the Prairie Bluff Conservation Area. And I just couldn't be more thrilled. Wanted to read a real brief quotation from the National Wildlife Federation. As habitat continues to be fragmented, degraded, and lost to development, the need for a coordinated connectivity network is growing. Better habitat connectivity will allow wildlife to migrate and disperse throughout the country with the changing seasons, boost biodiversity and resilience in the degraded ecosystems, safeguard genetic flow between populations, and ensure species are better able to adapt to our changing climate. Most importantly, we have no idea how the organisms, large and small, that will be able to migrate will affect water quality, but we can only assume from ecological history that it will benefit the water quality as well, just beyond having a buffer, but having healthy soil and all those good things being allowed to migrate. So I just wanted to say that, and I really appreciate the work that the board has done to advance this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Torkelson. Do we have anybody else from the public who wishes to speak at this time?
I'm
Mr. President,
Manager Cook?
and not only am I a manager, obviously I'm a resident, so I think it's important to respond to a couple of those items. But Ms. Torkelson, first of all, I said this before, I'm certainly not against preserving property, but as a watershed district, I believe we are basically being a special governmental entity, we're limited to the purposes set forth in the enabling statutes and the powers. And I have to state that as a matter of law, I believe acquiring this property would effectively turn into a park or conservation land. Is not consistent with our statutory authorities and the purposes for which we are established on that basis. And I think that it's up to, there are plenty of other agencies tasked with that task of preserving other property. Ours is to deal with and protect the water. There is nothing that has been shown that this property needs to be acquired to protect the waters. In fact, as you probably all know, actually the other 4 managers voted to approve a permit that is supposedly in existence, develop that property. And according to our rules, we don't have any degradation in the water. Therefore, I don't believe that we're in a position or purpose to be able to, or should be acquiring that property. Again, like I said, that doesn't mean that it isn't worthy of some protection. It's just not the watershed. And especially considering that according to statements made by Administrator Jeffrey in the course of discussing this acquisition, there will be at least some delay in work on other projects that I believe, according to a fair ranking under our system, are much more in need of being dealt with by this watershed district. They have direct impact on water erosion, water quality, as opposed to this. And the last thing I'll say is that, when I talk to some of the people about the friends or their group, I was assured that they had the money. The money was available to buy this purchase that wasn't necessary to raise any taxes or provide any funds from the watershed district. And that apparently was not true. Maybe things happened in the meantime, but if they can go find the money, and we have a legislature coming up, they should go do that. And the last comment I'll make is that I talked to one of the people involved who's told me that there's $2 billion over $2 billion up for grabs in the next legislative session. And that we should be, in my view, pursuing that as opposed to putting this burden just on the taxpayers within the district. So, as I said, I'm all for conservation. It's just, I don't believe it's within our legal, wheelhouse to do so. So thank you. I yield back.
Okay. I'm also excited about, I don't know how many times we've visited the 9 Mile Creek headquarters and admired what they've done and how it's a showcase and example for their district on all sorts of best management projects for water quality. And I've always lamented the fact that our watershed didn't have that. My husband always goes, well, we can donate our property, and our property is 1/3 acre and not adjacent to a wonderful conservation area. So I think that is another phenomenal opportunity for the watershed district to engage with the public and educate. Whereas you're kind of hidden away and surrounded by asphalt where you are. No offense, but I think that's another perk, and you might have to agree to disagree, Manager Cook, but I seem to recall that you're the one that first brought this up. So, and we did buy the Pioneer wetland, and that's just been a wonderful project too. So.
Thank you.
Well, Mr. President, it behooves me to ask just for a brief response since I was brought up. I think it's important. One thing, I brought it up, but for the reasons that I said before. Funding was supposedly available, and I was told that they simply needed a governmental organization to be the I don't know if they use the word front person, but effectively that's what they were stating. In my view, hey, if we're just the front person, the money comes elsewhere. I don't have a problem with it. It's also important, though, to address two other things real quickly. One, in my view, the acquisition of the Pioneer property had a flooding issue, which is specifically addressed, in the statutes, as opposed to just buying property for conservation. And then the last thing I'll mention is, in my view, many watersheds are doing things that are not authorized by the statute, but I have no influence there, such as building buildings, and we could go in a debate all along building buildings and other items. So again, I think it should be conserved. I don't have a problem with it. It's just I don't think it's within the district's wheelhouse. I yield back. I'm finished. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the next item on the agenda is reading and approval of the minutes. The first set of minutes is the minutes of the September 27th continuation of the September 13th regular meeting of the Board of Managers. Do we have any motions on this item?
Well, Mr. President,
Manager Cook?
I'd like to move that we approve all of the minutes listed A, B, and C rather than individually tacked, please.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any questions or comments on any of the sets of minutes that are on the agenda here?
President Ziegler, I was noted as being not present on the October 4th and the October 19th minutes. And in fact, I was there because they actually have quotes for me on both of the minute sets.
Very good. I'm sure our administrator can get that corrected. Are there any other questions or comments or revisions on any of the other minutes? Hearing none, are we ready for a roll call vote? It looks like we are. Mr. Smith, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes, on approval of the minutes, Manager Crafton,
Yes,
Manager Duval,
Yes,
Manager Cook,
Yes.
Manager Pedersen,
Yes.
President Ziegler.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. So the next item is the committee reports. And we have a resolution 23-069 to receive the committee reports.
President Ziegler?
Manager Crafton?
Yes, I'd like to move that we adopt resolution 23-069 to receive committee minutes.
Do we have a second?
I'll second, but I think we need to add the committee and staff reports.
Well, Mr. President,
Manager Cook?
if Manager Pedersen will second it, I'll move to amend that resolution 23-069 to add the staff report, engineers report, and regulatory report, which you referenced.
I'll
General.
second.
Okay, so we have a motion to amend the motion to approve, and the amendment is to add the October staff report, October engineers report, and the October regulatory report. Do we have any questions or comments on the motion to amend? Mr. Smith, can we have a roll call vote on the motion to amend?
Manager Crafton,
Yes,
Manager Duval,
yes,
Manager Cook,
Yes.
Manager Pedersen,
Yes.
President Ziegler.
Yes.
The amendment carries 5-0.
Okay, any questions or comments on the new motion, or are we okay to go directly to a vote?
Mr. President,
Manager Cook?
I'll try not to belabor this, but I had a couple of questions having to do with the staff report, most importantly about the aquatic invasive species. And so if I could proceed and just ask a couple questions about that, and then I think I had maybe one or two other questions.
Please proceed.
On the, I guess this is page 3, aquatic invasive species. Apparently there was, I guess, a single lift had a number of zebra mussels. There was I believe, a fishing boat that had one. So my question is, do we have plans, or has something already happened, plan already been implemented to try to figure out the source of those zebra mussels, and if anything, to try to eradicate them or control them?
President Ziegler, Manager Cook, we do not have a rapid response plan for this just because of the extent of the area that we have found these on, as well as the villager sampling. So it isn't, like Christmas Lake or Lake Ann, where it was in a very narrow, confined area that we could treat. As far as future, I'll let Staff Maxwell speak to the partnership with the DNR and Carver County on that.
Yep, thanks, Terry. President Ziegler, managers, Manager Cook. Yeah, we contacted the DNR, Carver County, and the city of Chanhassen, and we are looking into further, looking into the source of the mussels. Yeah, so Lotus was listed in 2019, I believe, and there were veligers found at that time. We have not found veligers since, but Carver County did find veligers this year as well. Veligers means reproduction, likely reproduction is occurring, whereas I know Terry brought up Ann. We have not found veligers in Lake Ann. That was a small introduction event that, well, we believe it was. We'll never know for sure unless we stop them. But so we quarantined off that area and treated it on Lake Ann, where we found lifts kind of scattered around Lotus. The history of the eDNA and the veliger history, there isn't really a spot to target. We have, to this date, there's been, just to be clear, to this date, there's been no live mussel that's been found on Lotus Lake. So these have all been desiccated. Even the mussel that came off on the boat this year was a desiccated mussel. So
Live adult veligers are living mussels.
Yeah. They're preserved in, we take the net, drop it to the bottom, lift it up real slow, and then those are preserved right away. Obviously, they would degrade pretty quickly, so likely they're alive.
Well, Mr. President, I guess,
Manager Cook?
I mean, this doesn't really give me enough, information. It'd be nice to have more specific information and maybe even have a discussion with the Lotus Lake Alliance. But if we I don't know everything about eDNA, but eDNA, like anything else, if you've ever been on Lotus Lake, you know how the wind, unfortunately, literally goes in the same path or the same direction as the lake does, with one exception being that one arm to the east. So some discussion about what possibly could be done to try to control these. And it's just a little mind-boggling to me that we end up with one lift that has it, and I don't know, was the boat checked? I mean, was it a boat that goes in and out from that lift? It's also kind of strange. I mean, that's just, it seems very odd to me. Okay, on that basis, maybe it isn't, but it seems very odd to me, and very odd to me that you have a fishing boat that, as I read this, never leaves the place and has but one zebra mussel. It's possible, but so I would like to see some further discussion and at least with the Lotus Lake Alliance, to see what, if anything, you do to try to keep it from spreading, if that's possible. So that's what I have on that. I can, unless somebody wants to comment on that, I can go on. I have just a couple other questions. The one question I had is there was a lot of there was discussion about, zooplankton sampling and et cetera. And am I correct to understand that there will be some report generated and upcoming? This is on page 4 if you're looking for it. And so will we be receiving a report, or a report be available if we wanted to look at it regarding the results of all of this various testing that's been done?
Yep. President Ziegler, Manager Cook, the results of phytoplankton and zooplankton are in the water resources report at the end of the year. I'm trying to add a historical component to it as well, so you have something to compare it to. Than just previously, I just included the just that year's data instead of the historical data. So
well, that would be great. I think that's important. I mean, everything's relative. So if you don't have any data to compare it to, it's hard to make a decision. Just ends up being a statement, like this is good, or you don't know if this is good, bad, and relative to what. So that would be excellent idea if you do that. So I think probably the last thing I wanted to look at was the lake level sensors, and just to ask the question, I think it's under 4, and I don't know if that was specific to Lotus Lake or not, but is that the data that we take? Does that go on that one website out there, or we have different data, and so
yep,
that's the answer. Right?
So the lake level data, we put in the lake level sensors close to ice out, and then we just pulled them this last week for all the lakes, and we do submit it to the DNR. There is a little bit of lag. It's on Lake Finder. It's a website that has all lake information, fisheries information. There is a little bit of a lag. They haven't put the last few years on there. So, but if anyone wants the data, we have it available. So
there is a conversion that's necessary. So you can't go straight from what's there. Is that correct, Staff Maxwell?
yeah, so they do a daily average water level versus we have data every 15 minutes on the lake. So.
Well, so I just follow up. So we have that Enviro DIY. Are we providing that information, or is that information accurate? Is kind of my question. Yeah,
the Enviro DIY units, we have switched some of our lake level units to the Enviro DIY units. Some of the live data, it's not QC'd. So if you were to go to the website, monitor my watershed, it's not QC'd, but it is live data. So.
Yeah, by QC, you mean?
Just reviewing it. Yep. So we still visit them once a month minimum. Sure. And compare it to our initial staff gauge reading, and then you can kind of see if there's any drift or anything like that. So
do you have any opinion looking at that as to how accurately DYI reflects the actual lake level?
Yeah, they've done really well. So yeah.
Okay. But and I'm sorry, that's I could have done a better job getting there, I guess. Sorry about that. Let's see. I think there was well, one observation of page 6 having to do like vegetation management, and it all if I read it right, the biomass was less this year. And is that, and it seemed to me that we had the lower water levels. It seems to me that this discussion implied that, excuse me, maybe the lower lake levels had something to do with it. I assume higher water, more volume, more mass can grow. We have lower water levels, probably less mass grows. Is that an accurate assumption?
Yeah, so lake vegetation is a lot of different factors can impact vegetation growth. Even treatments that we've done this year may have impacted growth. We had a late spring. Plants got started a little bit later as well. All the different factors can roll into that. That's why we do the point intercept surveys, at least 3 every third year on every lake. Some of our lakes get a lot more than that just because we have a lot going on them. So we want to keep track of it. So.
And I think maybe thank you. I think maybe this is the last question I had. I believe it has to do with Lake Mitchell and the brittle naiad. And did we treat that this year? And do we have a continuing treatment plan on that?
Yeah, so the brittle naiad on Mitchell Lake was found by Eden Prairie when they one of their consultants conducted a point intercept survey. We work with Eden Prairie and in our rotation to make sure we have that coverage. But it was found during a survey that was late. Point intercept surveys are usually carried out in late summer. And at that point, if you treat, you can really damage the native population. So I worked with the DNR and Eden Prairie, and we determined that we shouldn't treat at this time, and we'll monitor it moving forward, see if we want to treat. That arm that it was most abundant in is very isolated from the lake. It's very clear water. There's a lot more plant growth in there. There's a lot more native species in that bay too. So we didn't really want to damage the native species. And just what we've seen with brittle naiad in our in other lakes, it kind of competes with everything else fairly, where, I mean, it's a weird way to put it, but like Eurasian water milfoil and curleaf pondweed, they get that jump on all the native plants versus brittle naiad is growing right with them. And so we don't see these huge stands of brittle naiad. It's more of, it's competing with everything like a normal plant. It's not to say that it's still invasive, and it can be invasive. So we still need to keep an eye on it and treat if possible. So we were looking into potentially treating next year, but like I said, we'll see how it goes.
Well, thank you very much. That's all that I have. Thank you, Mr. President.
Okay, are there any other questions or comments on the motion to, or I guess we got a,
Do we want the Citizen Advisory Committee representative to give their report?
yes, okay. Thank you. Is that,
It's Marilyn Torkelson, and she's on mute right now, but trying to talk.
So it was a very fun but meeting. We got to talk about 2 happy events. Terry gave a wonderful presentation on the Ecosystem Health Action Plan, and we talked about how the cities and counties all have these shared problems that are preventing ecosystem health, and just thrilled that these teams of highly educated people are working on resolutions and coordinating them and strengthening the goals of everyone for healthier ecosystems. We're looking forward to reviewing the completed plan next year. Terry also talked a bit about the what's the Spring Road Conservation Project. And I think I'm not the only one that was kind of thrilled with the work that the watershed's doing, and that we're definitely helping to prevent the construction of 50 homes that would likely degrade the water of Riley Creek, and that would be instead hopefully restored and actually improve the water quality. So that was about it. Were there any questions?
Do any of the managers have any questions? Okay, hearing none. Thank you, Mrs. Torkelson. Was there any other of all the committee reports and engineer and so forth, was there any more that needed discussion? I'm not hearing anything. Can we have a roll call vote on approving the, I believe we had a resolution, is that 23-066? Is that correct?
069, President Ziegler,
Okay,
as amended.
Mr. Smith, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes, Manager Crafton,
Yes,
Manager Duval,
Yes,
Manager Cook,
Yes.
Manager Pedersen,
Yes.
President Ziegler.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, so if my notes are correct, we've got the consent agenda items, which was new business, item D. Terry, do you have that in front of you?
It was, so the consent agenda, which is resolution 23066, will be to approve item what was 7D, 2023 ODOT 3 Gilpin Boulevard variance request. Item 7E, which is 2023 ODOT 3 Gilpin Boulevard exception request. Item F, which is the 2023 ODOT 3 Gilpin Boulevard permit, as presented in the proposed board action section of the report. And resolution 23-7, which is to approve bar engineering request to increase budget for task order 44.
Okay, do any of the managers have questions or comments at this time?
Mr. President,
Manager Cook?
is there a motion on the floor yet? I mean, I missed it.
There is,
Okay, so do we have a motion?
If not, I'll move the adoption of resolution 23-066 to cover the items listed by Administrator Jeffrey, if he could have those included in the final resolution.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do you have any questions or comments? Hearing none, Mr. Smith, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Manager Crafton,
yes,
Manager Duval,
yes,
Manager Cook,
Yes.
Manager Pedersen,
Yes.
President Ziegler.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, so we still had on the new business, the next item was the October Treasurers Report. Do we have a motion on this item?
are we? Okay. Yes, I'll move the receipt of the treasurer's report as submitted. It's been reviewed in terms of in accordance with our internal controls and procedures.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any questions or comments on the October Treasurers Report?
Yes, Mr. President.
Manager Cook?
Yeah, I have some questions and comments, and I guess maybe I still don't understand the new format, but I'll just, and maybe it's because of differences on dates. I just noticed that actually now. So if I'm looking at what is, I guess, page 4 of the report at the top, I have a balance sheet dated August 31, and that has a net income of $269,027.66. But I would have thought that we would have had a balance sheet dated September 30th. And I just noticed the date right now. So maybe that explains why when I go to the page 5, but it's on the page, it says page 1 of 2 of the Treasury's report. It states that income is $217,792.58. And my original question before I noticed the date difference was, why don't they match? So maybe perhaps this should be tabled until the accountant and the treasurer and the accounting and finance committee can come back and make sure that we're looking at the right, documents. So that just jumped out at me. They didn't match, and I thought that they should match. And so that's really the main issue. And I think the same thing was, maybe it had to do with interest.
President Ziegler,
Well, and
sorry.
excuse me, I want to finish. Sorry.
Andrew
But we just
Crafton?
have varying dates. We've got, November on some of them, and then we've got, October on others. And we even have September when we're talking about the 4M fund. And it seems to me that if we're doing, I thought we were always doing reports as of the end of the preceding, be the end of the month. That's what, 2. So if we would be dealing with September's, we wouldn't be dealing with October. So it seems to me our report should be as of September 30th, because that's when we have the latest known information, reconciled and all that other good stuff. So I find these very confusing, and I would like the treasurer and the accounting and finance to go back and look at, what should be the format and what should really be the dates. I mean, I could see giving us 2. We could, we could get a September, and then there could also be an October through a certain cutoff date, because it's not possible to generate this before the end of the month and have it say that it's as of the end of the month. There would be a cutoff date. But so I don't quite understand, but I think we need to clarify that, so we have a good idea what's actually happening in what month.
Manager Crafton?
Yeah, the date that says August 31st is an error. Should have been October, but I just didn't get around to calling Bonnie and asking her to change it. So that was a problem with that.
Mr. President, just a
Cook?
couple other questions. Well, I'm not sure that's right, so that's why I asked that again after the meeting. Take a look at it. Then I have 2 other items on page 1 of 10, which I think is page 7 of the document. Item 40, we have Riley Creek, and we've got $6,121,000. And I'm trying to figure out where that comes from, because I do not believe that's within our duly adopted budget for 2023. And to go along with that, we have on the total expenditures on that page, which I guess would be the second line or third line from the bottom, we've got a total of $11,644,000, which again is in my review, is not consistent with the actual 2023 adopted budget. So again, I'm going to ask that these be reviewed and responses be provided regarding my questions. And let me see if I had anything else. The only other overall issue, I guess, would be I would prefer on the report, starting at like at page 2 of 10, it says percent expended, and I know I can extrapolate and I can do the math, but I think we were maybe it'd be helpful also to just have the other side of that amount, percentage remaining. We have balance remaining, but then we go to percentage expended. I think it either should be balance remaining and balance and percentage remaining. Not a big deal, but I think that would help make more sense of it. So those are let's see, hang on. I think that's the extent of my comments. Thank you.
Okay, are there any questions, comments, or responses? Hearing none, Manager Cook, you said you'd like to not approve this. Is that what I'm hearing, or approve
Well,
it,
I'd like
correct it, accept it and correct it?
He made a motion to table.
Correct.
So, but it's not, is it one thing we're doing? Okay. So there was a motion to table. Is there a second on the motion to table?
I'll second to table.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second to table the, I'm not sure where I am on the agenda here.
Receipt of the treasurer's report.
Yes. On the
7Z.
receipt of. Okay. So, do we have any more questions or comments on the motion to table before we vote on the motion to table? Hearing none, Mr. Smith, can we have a roll call vote on tabling the approval or acceptance of the treasurer report?
Manager Crafton,
Yes,
Manager Duval,
Yes,
Manager Cook,
Yes.
Manager Pedersen,
Yes.
President Ziegler.
Yes.
Motion to table carries 5-0.
Okay. So we still have to pay the bills. I believe that's the next thing on the agenda. Do we have any motions regarding this item?
President Ziegler.
Manager Kraft?
Yes, I would move. What is the number? I would move adoption of resolution 23-067, approving payment of the bills. I have tied all of that out very explicitly.
I'll second the motion to pay the bills. Do we have any questions or comments on paying the bills? Hearing none, Mr. Smith, can we have a roll call vote on accepting or approving, adopting resolution 23-067, approving payment of the bills?
Manager Crafton,
Yes,
Manager Duval,
yes,
Manager Cook,
Yes.
Manager Pedersen,
Yes.
President Ziegler.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, keep turning to the wrong page.
The item 7G.
Okay. So item 7G, award Lake Susan Park Pond reuse intake modification to Peterson Companies. Do we have any motions on this item?
I move we award the Lake Susan Park Pond reuse intake modification to Peterson Companies as stated.
I'll second the motion. Do we have any questions or comments on the item G, Susan Park Pond
Yeah.
project?
Yes, Mr. President.
Manager Cook?
So I'm wondering if the issues with this, this floating suction intake, do they predate the years of low water level? Or is this really a function of the fact that we've had a really low water level this year? So that's my question.
President Ziegler, Manager Cook, from the very first that it was put online, we've been having issues with it losing prime. So from 2018, 17, I forget which year it went on, but yes, we've been having the same issues every year with it.
And then if I could follow up with a question.
Manager Cook?
So in your educated opinion, I guess maybe but both Administrator Jeffrey and Mr. Sobiak, the proposed proposed work should alleviate that problem?
President Ziegler, Manager Cook, I will defer to Engineer Sobiak, but my understanding, this design has been used other places successfully.
President Ziegler, Manager Cook, Administrator Jeffrey is correct. This design has been used successfully other places. We've also worked with the vendor to help ensure that it meets all of their design criteria as well. So to the best of our knowledge, it will resolve the issue.
Well, Mr. President, I want to move for a couple of amendments to the proposed resolutions.
I'd like to hear them, yeah.
Sure. If you go to the second line, after manager, the second line says for Lake Susan. Go toward the end, it says intake modification project. I think it would be helpful to just put a parenthetical in there, the project, because that'll help lower on later on. But typically put that in there. Then in the first resolved, just change construction project to capitalized project. Then my last comment is in the last resolved. It should say resolved that the administrator is authorized to execute change orders. Hang on, sorry. The aggregate amount of which shall not exceed 10%. I believe that's what was always meant, but it's pretty unclear. So the aggregate amount of which shall not exceed 10% of the contract amount.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Do we have any questions or comments on the motion to amend? Hearing none, Mr. Smith, can we have a roll call vote, please?
On the amendment, Manager Crafton,
Yes.
Manager DeVal,
Yes.
Manager Cook,
Yes.
Manager Pedersen,
Yes.
President Ziegler.
Yes.
The amendment carries 5-0.
Okay, Administrator Jeffrey, you have made those notes accordingly, so we can proceed with approving of the motion as amended. Do we have any questions or comments on? We had a motion and a second to approve it, so I believe we're good if we have any, unless we have comments on the motion as amended. So hearing none, can we have a roll call vote to approve the motion as amended?
Manager Crafton,
Yes.
Manager Duval,
Yes.
Manager Cook,
Yes.
Manager Pedersen,
Yes.
President Ziegler.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, I believe the next thing on the agenda is to approve the resolution 23-068 to elect 2 Minnesota watershed delegates and alternative. So one alternate. Do we have any motions on this matter?
President Ziegler, I'd like to move that we approve the resolution 23-068, nominating Manager Crafton and yourself, President Ziegler, as our 2 delegates and our alternate as Tom Duval.
Okay, I'll second that motion. Do we have any questions or comments on the resolution before we proceed? Hearing none, can we have a roll call vote on resolution 23-068?
Manager Crafton,
Yes.
Manager Duval,
Yes.
Manager Cook,
Yes.
Manager Pedersen,
Yes.
President Ziegler.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is the Spring Road Conservation Project Resolution 23-071 to authorize engagement of Northland Securities. Do we have any motion on this item?
President Ziegler, I move that we adopt the Spring Road Conservation Project Resolution 23-071.
I will second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any questions or comments?
Mr. President,
Yes.
if I could just provide background for the board and introduce Mr. George Eilertson. Following your action to approve the assignment agreement and initiate the plan amendment and hearing process on ordering the Spring Road Conservation Project, we followed up with Hennepin County Finance about both the short-term and long-term financing needs for this project. We received a response from Hennepin County indicating that they did not feel that they would be in a position to provide short-term financing on the timetable that was requested, but that they would be in a position to provide long-term financing through the issuance of bonded debt, basically a year from now, the late fall of 2024. And what that, in discussing with Mr. Jeffrey, that response, I reviewed that with our public finance bond counsel, Mr. Stephen Roshold, and we recognize that the district has its own authority to issue its own debt, and that it would be appropriate to explore that as the path for short-term financing, and then be able to turn to the Hennepin County financing late next year. Mr. Roshold and I have worked together on watershed district bonding matters in the past. Mr. Roshold had a full career at the Faegre law firm as bond counsel and retired some years ago and continues to practice at the QTech Rock firm. He has recommended in the past, and I have gotten to know and worked with Mr. George Eilertson from Northland Finance. Mr. Eilertson can describe more about his background, but he has worked with a number of watershed districts on issuing bonded debt. And I reviewed with Mr. Roshold this situation and see what he might be able to do to assist the district in addressing the short-term financing needs. And I believe he feels like he is in a position to assist, and he can describe that. The action that you would take tonight is simply to authorize the engagement of Mr. Eilertson, his firm, Northland Finance, as a placement agent. He can explain more about what that means, but in essence, it would involve the district issuing a private placement of a general obligation temporary bond. Mr. Eilertson has an engagement letter that he has provided. We would also recommend that our template services agreement be on top of that with his engagement letter as an attachment. And also with that services agreement, clarity about Mr. Eilertson's fee for this engagement and placement of that short-term debt, which he will describe, but I think we would identify that then specifically. So if you do take that positive action of engaging Mr. Eilertson's firm, then he would proceed to bring back, do the work that he does in the marketplace and come back with a recommendation about the most favorable terms for the district on short-term financing. You would then be in a position to consider that as you consider the other related decisions for the project. It may be at your November 16th meeting. It may be sometime after that, but before the end of the year. So with that, I would like to, if it's okay with the board, have Mr. Eilertson introduce himself and describe what he understands about this situation and how he might be able to help.
Okay, Mr. Iverson, is it?
Eilertson.
Eilert. Thank you. You have the floor.
Good evening, Mr. President and managers, and thank you, your attorney Smith, with a great introduction in terms of, for my benefit as well, just providing a great overview of the financing need, the relationship with Hennepin County, and the need for short-term borrowing. To reintroduce myself, George Eilertson, I work for an investment bank, Northland Securities. We have an office in Minneapolis and others throughout the Midwest. We're a firm that works with units of government, cities, counties, school districts, and special districts such as watershed districts throughout the Midwest. I've worked with a number of other watershed districts throughout the metropolitan area on putting together financings for their projects. And typically that's through the issuance of general obligation bonds. As I understand your financing need, it's to secure essentially a one-year financing to get your project financed in the short term, and it serves as a bridge to the long-term financing. My understanding would be the takeout with Hennepin County. So as Mr. Smith indicated, I've had the opportunity to work with him and the other gentleman, Steve Rosholt, that was referenced earlier. He is the bond attorney, very important individual in my line of work because they provide the opinion that you can issue tax-exempt debt. So that's a very important step before a municipality or a special district like yourself can issue bonds. So the engagement letter that's in front of you this evening essentially creates a relationship between Northland Securities and the watershed district. And prior to receiving that engagement, we're not supposed to, due to regulatory rules, not supposed to get into structuring of debt conversations. And but certainly it's a non-binding agreement. It doesn't require that you issue debt, nor does it require that you work with Northland Securities. It's simply providing that relationship so we can provide advice and work with you going forwards towards one of your upcoming meetings. It's certainly achievable to get a financing put together and closed by the end of the calendar year. So that's my understanding. That's your goal, and that's certainly an achievable goal. We've done this many times, and it's when we're working towards the end of the calendar year, things get a little bit tight, but there's certainly time to get your financing structured identify a purchaser of the debt and close on that financing. So we are at Northland Securities, we're the largest underwriter or purchaser of tax exempt debt in Minnesota. So we know the market very well. Our role in this financing would be, again, work with your administrator, work with your legal team to put together a fact sheet, if you will, or a term sheet for local lending institutions to learn more about your project, to learn more about the structure of the debt, and then to provide a financing bid. Because we're very active in the marketplace, we know what the rates should be, and we would certainly know that if there's a fair bid in hand for you to consider approval of. So we're working on your behalf, certainly not working on behalf of the purchaser of the debt. And like I indicated, that we would work on identifying that purchaser, getting a fair rate for you. It would be a rate and a structure that would be flexible for the watershed district, meaning that it might be a 1-year financing, maybe a 1.5-year financing, with the ability to exit at any point without penalty. So that's an important aspect because, when you talk about the fall of 2024, it sounds like we're less than 12 months. So potentially before Hennepin County would provide the long-term financing and the takeout for this. So it's important that you've got that ability to exit this financing at any point without penalty. So we would make sure that provision is in there for this financing as well. With that said, President and managers, I just wanted to thank you for the opportunity to present to you this evening, and I can certainly address any questions that you may have.
Do any of the managers have questions or comments at this time?
President?
Manager Duval?
So, Mr. Ellertson, you mentioned that you are the largest purchaser of the tax-free debt. How can you advise and be the largest purchaser? It seems like you'd be advising for your firm and dealing with the terms that would be favorable to your firm versus the marketplace.
Mr. President and managers, thank you for that question, and very good question. In the capacity that we would be serving your watershed district, we wouldn't be purchasing the debt. We would be serving in more of an advisory capacity, putting together the structure for the financing and then identifying more than likely a local lending institution to purchase the debt. I brought up the aspect of Northland being a very active member of the tax exempt marketplace. That's more from an aspect of, is this a fair interest rate? Because we do financings several different ways. Sometimes we're purchasing the debt. Sometimes we're in a capacity like I'm working with here, where we're advising and kind of coordinating a financing on a district's behalf. And I hope that was understandable explanation. Thank you.
Manager Duval, does that answer your question?
Yes. Yep.
Do any of the other managers have questions?
Mr. President.
Manager Cook?
So, well, I just, again, I want to be clear about this. And I think that well, put it this way. I mean, we do need our overriding agreement. I would agree with Attorney Smith with that respect. And because there's a number of items we obviously have to include, but I don't know if everybody's read this agreement or proposed agreement, and they should, if they haven't, because it's, I don't know whether you drafted it or your lawyers, but your lawyers, I'm sure, did it for a reason. I mean, it clearly says that Northland's not a fiduciary, so technically by its words, you owe us no duty on that basis. So I think your role needs to be clarified, and when I read this first, my sense was, well, you're basically a broker. You find a buyer and a seller, and you get what you get, and the two parties have to decide that they want to do the transaction. But I think it's very difficult to be able to be an advisor, and we shouldn't be going into this assuming that Northland is going to be an advisor if they don't owe us any legal fiduciary duty. And in fact, on paragraph 4, it talks about, we may want to engage a municipal advisor. Well, unless Northland is going to take on that role, which they probably don't because they won't want to because they're the broker, they find buyers and they find sellers, but we should be getting what they call a municipal advisor to advise us, okay, be on our side of the fence and advising us on the transaction. I think that, and obviously these, I don't know if if we just have a single buyer, that's one thing, and you may have an escrow agent or a closing agent, or maybe, Northland even acts as that. I have no idea. I know US Bank does a huge amount of all this bond stuff, but I think they're all on big deals. I'm not sure they do anything, on the level that we would be talking about. But at least the firm that I was with did a lot of, debt and bond work with, and it seemed like US Bank kept floating around as being the escrow agent or trustee if you had or indentures, and they called them indentures, and just another flavor, right, of ice cream on that basis. So I would say that those three issues would need to be worked out and be clarified exactly, what Northland's role would be. And as I understand what you said is the district is not on the hook for anything unless it is until it basically signs the dotted line and agrees to issue debt to a purchaser that you've at least been involved in with. And I would think our agreement needs to make it very clear that the district can cut the cord at any time, and without any obligations, which I think your agreement says that, but I'll leave it to legal counsel since I'm not getting paid my hourly rate for making those statements. So I'll leave that to Mr. Smith to make sure that we have that ability, and other than expenses we actually agree to provide, we don't do that. But so and let me just, those are my comments about the agreement that I think need to be boiled into any agreement. And I'm not, I said this before, just so sir, it's nothing against you, but I don't vote for agreements I don't see. Unfortunately, I was trained and practiced a lawyer, so hopefully you don't take that personal on that basis. But, we need somebody to advise us on this. I have concerns about doing short-term debt in this marketplace. It could go either way. It could be a great thing. It could be a bad thing. The problem is we basically, as I understand it, our oath is to act as if we were acting for ourselves. And I think it's hard to, I would be reluctant to be going into and signing on a contract and buying property on just short-term debt, because I don't know what's going to happen in 12 months. And if I were doing it, seems to me the prudent person would say, don't do anything now, or, lock in what you have and you live with it. And I think especially since we have statutory restrictions on what we can do and spend, I think it behooves us to think twice before we go into a transaction on a short-term finance. And so my recommendation is that we don't actually do that, because I think that's not a prudent thing to do in this environment, and that instead we should be having discussions about the terms of the agreement that we have. So, and then my final comment is, so if we sign something like this that comes up and basically says, we can walk anytime, no commitments, etc. we need somebody to advise us, you know, should we be doing this or not doing this? And I don't know if that's going to be Northland or if we really need to get somebody else. And so my recommendation is that, you know, we table this and maybe we reconvene in a few days after Mr. Smith has been able to put together, you know, one of his agreements that we typically have for providing services and incorporate the appropriate terms from your letter. So that's what I think we should be doing. So do we have a motion on the table yet? I forget, my memory's too short here.
Mr. Smith requested we get this part of it done
Interim.
first. So do any of the other managers have any questions or comments?
Mr. President, I have a follow-up comment if any of the other managers don't have one right now.
Yes, go ahead.
So if I could just follow up on Manager Koch's comments. So I'm wondering, can you explain the difference between a bond advisor, which you did suggest in this note, and the capacity which you would be working for us now? Can you explain the difference? And also to his comment about fiduciary versus not acting as a fiduciary. And then I have one more question also.
Mr. President and managers, excellent questions. Thank you for that. And typically I would be sitting here and talking with you about you know, quite possibly serving in that role of municipal advisor. We do that regularly. One of the reasons why a private placement agreement is in front of you as opposed to a municipal advisory agreement is the short-term nature of this debt and the short timeline to get the debt financed as well. A private placement, when we work in that capacity, we're serving in the role as a municipal advisor. It doesn't say that. There's not a municipal advisory agreement. We're serving in that capacity internally of putting together offering documents, working on your behalf, etc. A private placement is when there is more than likely one buyer that might be at the table for your financing. It may lend itself towards a private placement type of financing arrangement. If we find that interest rate, if you will, that lending institution provides is not a market rate, then we would shop it elsewhere. As a municipal advisor, you more or less put together a financing package and put it out to bid, and then you take the results in. A private placement, how that differs is that we can also submit or send out your financing structure to multiple bidders, but if the results are not indicative of the market, and we know that there's certain buyers that would like, for example, your watershed district bonds, we can directly place it with them. So it's working in a little bit larger capacity of placing your debt. Again, it's not that different, a municipal advisor and a placement agent. Happy to explain more if there is a little uncertainty about my answer there, but no board and president and managers that we would be certainly working on your behalf, as Manager Koch indicated earlier, that it wouldn't be a fee paid to Northland until a satisfactory result is in place, that you have a resolution awarding that sale. We work in that capacity. The bond attorney, which is the one that is not your local attorney, but the bond attorney that provides the opinion on the issuance of the debt, they also work in that capacity of no fee paid unless you have a successful financing put together. So I hope that sheds a little bit more light on a private placement.
it does, but if just on that point, could you address why you wouldn't be acting as a fiduciary if you're working on our behalf? Is it more than just statute, or is there something else?
No, I appreciate, and President and managers, thank you again for the questions. I'll go back and review your question. It might be that putting a municipal advisor agreement in front of you would make more sense. I'll review with your staff. When we have a short-term financing like this, as opposed to say a 20-year financing obligation, the likely scenario or the likely end result is we have one buyer that purchases the debt. I'll review with your administrator, who do you have banking relationships?
Did he freeze?
Looks like
Yes.
he's frozen.
Yes, it's frozen.
Not a
Well, it's cold enough outside.
So I don't know if he can hear it all, but if I could add another question in here, or should I just wait, Mr. President?
Mr. Smith, I think you probably have his contact information if you can try and contact him.
Yeah, I'll do that right now.
Thank you.
Mr. President,
Manager Cook?
I'm wondering if it wouldn't be a good idea in light of the comments here to maybe table this, do a continuance until like Friday, if that worked for everybody. And maybe that would, I don't know if that's enough time, but could allow Attorney Smith and Administrator Jeffrey and again, I'm stumped on how to pronounce his last name again. But anyhow, with the people from Northland to confer and get a recommendation then from the three as to what we should be agreeing to. I don't think a couple days is going to make a difference, or Monday. I don't know what other people said, but I would assume it's going to take us like a half hour. I would hope we would be done.
Okay, we're still waiting for Mr. Smith to say if we can reconnect or not.
Mr. President, I'm not able to connect with Mr. Eilertson. I did hear Manager Cook's suggestion. There was a motion before you.
He's
Terry.
coming back. Sorry, excuse me. I'm sorry. There he is.
My apologies if that may have certainly been on my end. And I'm not sure where I left off, but I believe I was just explaining that the difference between municipal advisor and private placement agent. So I can certainly gather up or have a conversation with your administrator and your attorney and talk about what would be the best fit going forward. Ultimately, my goal is the same as yours, which is to get you the best financing for 1 year, make it the most friendly to you, not necessarily the purchaser. I'm working on your behalf, not the behalf of the ultimate purchaser of the debt. So if you would prefer that, President and managers, that we review what would be an appropriate agreement, whether it be a municipal advisor agreement as opposed to this placement agent agreement, and have that for your November 16th meeting, I'd be happy to work with your staff and Mr. Smith on that.
Mr. Smith, what's your comments?
I think I would pick up on Manager Cook's suggestion, which is we continue this meeting for a few days from now and bring that agreement back so that we can have Mr. Eilertson working rather than wait till 2 weeks or so.
Gotcha.
So if we could find an appropriate time, we would table and it could be maybe Monday or something like that.
Well, Mr. President,
Manager Cook?
I guess I keep losing track of actually, do we have a motion up there, but, if we don't have a motion, I move to table and, people just throw out when they would be available. I'm free all day on Monday at any time, if that works. I don't want to press, the members of the team coming up with the agreement, but, I'm agree with, Attorney Smith. We're going to do it. Let's do it. We do need an advisor. I've got lots of questions, but in all fairness, I think we should be signing an agreement. We don't want to run afoul of the securities laws, but I have further questions. So, are we in a place for a motion, or do we have one, or do I need to move to
I
amend?
think we need to pick a date before we have a motion, right?
But President Ziegler, managers, there was a motion on the table. Dorothy moved to accept resolution 23071, and it was seconded by Manager Crafton.
But a motion to table would be in order and would take precedence if
Right.
that's what you'd like to do.
So, Mr. President,
Manager Cook, I believe my calendar is okay for Monday. So I don't know about other people.
Mine too.
Mine is open.
Manager Crafton, you're muted.
I have a meeting from 9 to 4 that day. What time are you suggesting?
can I suggest 4 p.m. then?
Well, I got to get home from Egan.
Okay, 5 o'clock,
Okay,
5:30. I mean, I'm flexible.
Okay,
I should be
so
able to make it by 5:30.
Okay, so I move that we table this discussion and that we ultimately continue this meeting for the purposes of having this discussion for 5:30 on Monday, the 6th of November.
we have a motion to table. Do we have a second? I believe Dorothy,
All second.
thank you.
Mr. President,
Manager Duval?
so I don't know if it's appropriate to ask one more question here before our next meeting or not, or just table everything.
If you think this is a question that can be answered now, I don't
Well,
see any reason not to ask.
So I think in our discussions all along here, we were looking at the possibility of, or the ultimate financing from Hennepin County. And I think having a short-term interim financing really does add another risk factor element into it in terms of cost and the financing. We're going into an election year next year. And if we're going a year out, I guess I would have some concerns also without knowing we secure 1 year financing and a year from now, the markets are going absolute crazy. What happens at that point? I thought this was going to be a one-step process in the purchase. Nope. Okay.
Not sure you're looking at.
Not sure. Oh, I was looking at Lewis.
Mr. President,
Mr. Smith?
I do think we were always anticipating that Hennepin County would not be in a position to issue long-term debt in the short term by the date that the district wants to close. And so there would need to be short-term financing either from the county or from the district's own means.
Okay. I think I do remember that now.
What is favorable is that Hennepin County has a AAA rating, which would be difficult. I mean, the district does not have that. And so ultimately the long-term debt would likely be on more favorable terms through Hennepin County, but there is the 1 year time. And what, will interest rates be a year from now? That is an issue that I think is something that you should all be aware of.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we have a motion to table and a second. Do we have any other questions before we table this or vote to table this? Hearing none, Mr. Smith, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Manager Crafton,
Yes,
Manager Duell,
Yes.
Manager Cook,
Yes.
Manager Pedersen,
Yes.
President Ziegler.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, and our continuation won't happen until we finish the rest of the agenda items, I assume?
Right.
So I think we're effectively going to table J and K as well. Is that correct?
J and K would be one item. It was supposed to be moved into one item, but yes.
Okay. So then the next item would be the discussion items, the boardroom discussion.
Yes.
Mr. Jeffrey, do you want to tell us about this?
Oh, not really, but I will. President Ziegler, managers. So as I blame Manager Pedersen. She jinxed us because we have some licensing issues, which is not allowing us to access our AV at this time. It should be a very easy fix. But what I would like to recommend is that if we do not have it fixed by Friday or so of this week, we can maybe even talk about it at continuation, that we decide whether or not we want to try and move forward with the 11/16 in person or push it off until December 1st. So right now it's not allowing us to access the actual system that broadcasts it to the public at large. So my conversation with Lelch is that it was going to be a simple fix. They just need to get in there and install it. But I don't want to say that it will be ready. So
Okay, so we could delay this to our continuation meeting, and if there's an update, you can give it. If not, then we have to, because I think our agreement was if we would test it and make sure everything was working before we made the change.
Yep, President Ziegler, managers, and it was working. And then, so apparently we were on a provisional license, and that license expired, and then everything went away, and I have to get the new license installed. So, yeah.
Okay. Thank you. So then the next discussion item was the workshop schedule.
Yep, President Ziegler, managers. I would like to actually, I don't have too much to add. I've been working on a new workshop schedule, one that I would like to present, where we have quarterly workshop meetings, and then as items arise where we feel we need additional workshops, then we would just schedule those to those. But I hope to bring that back to the board at the December meeting with a full slate of meeting dates and topics for those times.
And as I understand it, the workshops are causing a lot of after-hour work for staff.
After hour and during our time, there's a lot of time is being devoted to the meetings. So I'm just trying to find that balance, because I do agree that there is benefit that is gained from the workshops. So I'm trying to find that balance between the two. So I'll bring a schedule back for discussion in December, and we'll see where that goes.
Oh, Mr. President?
Manager Cook?
Well, I think that one of the benefits, of having these workshops is for a time to properly discuss items just such as, do we have workshops? How do we do it? Who attends? When do you have to attend? And not be taking up time during, the regular meeting where we're really conducting business that the constituents out there really want to, pay attention and see what happens, or they got a permit or whatever it is. So I don't know if you can do it by the workshop for November, or maybe, I don't know if we even have a workshop scheduled for December, but I think we should have time to talk about it. And that's what I like about workshops, or the concept of the workshops. We can talk about these things that don't necessarily have to be acted upon, but we can have some good discussion, pros and cons. I mean, can't help but have a lot of thoughts about different aspects of it. So I don't know. It's Administrator Jeffrey, you have to.
Yeah.
I don't know what you're.
President Ziegler, managers, I'm gonna look to Mr. Smith if we can do, so that meeting will be our public hearing for the Spring Road Conservation Project. But I don't think there's any reason why we couldn't do a workshop either right before or right after that public hearing and discuss the calendar at that time. So I've got it mostly completed, so I don't see that being an issue if you want to discuss it at the November 16th meeting.
Mr. Smith, is there any reason we can't do both at the November 16th meeting?
He says no.
As long as it's properly noticed, no problem.
Okay, very good. Any more discussion on the workshop? Okay, the next discussion item is the Minnesota Watersheds Annual Conference schedule. I believe everyone should have received the sneak peek, I think they called it, of the annual conference. Is there any other things you wanted to talk about, Mr. Jeffrey?
President Ziegler, managers, the only thing I want to confirm is that all managers wish to attend for all days of the conference, and then I will get the rooms. So that's all.
President Ziegler?
Manager Crafton.
Yeah, I had one other issue. It's not quite the schedule, but so Charles Becker had sent another video of the wake boat damage, which has got even more substance to it. Where is the wake boat resolution in terms of where we are at the annual conference?
It's been introduced. I modified the resolution with the new data that we had, but otherwise it's still alive, for lack of a better word, because of it has not sunset from the previous date. So it's still there. It's still in front of Minnesota Watershed for consideration to move forward to the legislature with.
So what I was wondering is if we could send a link to that piece that has a visual of what the boats are doing on the floor, on the bottom.
So I think the committee has met, and I don't think this was one that they recommended to, it'll be there, but they didn't recommend to update it, I believe. But if you send it to myself and to Jan, I think, it is what it is at this point, but we will still vote at it at the conference. So that the committee recommends, they don't make a decision.
Okay, I just wanted to see if it would be made available in case anybody did want to view it.
Yeah, I guess I would like to see it, and if you can send it to Jan, she can forward it to other watersheds that have supported it in the past.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Mr. President.
Manager Cook?
Yeah, again, I think that's important to do because it's becoming a bigger issue in the, I guess we call it outstate area, with these boats, and it's not just a metro area. But on the other hand, having attended enough of these Minnesota water ones, I get some concern that there's a significant divide between outstate and metropolitan areas. And I don't know if this is something that we should be bringing up to the metro, what do you call it, metro region or whatever it is,
Watersheds,
for
yeah.
them to get behind it, and maybe as a region we'll have more input or more success, with the Minnesota Waters Board itself as to what we move forward. But it will be, it is, and it will become a more significant issue in outstate, even probably as far up as Lake Vermilion, Mr. Smith.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? Has everyone gotten back to Administrator Jeffrey on what days? Because it actually starts on Tuesday for some of us. But I don't think it starts on Tuesday for all of us.
No, but President Ziegler, managers, I would still get rooms for every manager Tuesday night, because Wednesday it begins early in the day. So, and then
Okay.
get them Thursday night so that they don't have to drive back in another blizzard should we not want to. So,
Okay. So you're sure the blizzard's going to be on Thursday, not Friday?
It's going to be on Tuesday.
yeah, probably. So
Maybe we should have a little. No, we can't talk about wagers and things like that. That's not allowed. That's all.
Okay. Any more discussion on the annual conference? Okay, we have members' reports. Do any of the managers have any reports?
Mr. President,
Manager Cook?
I mean, I will save everybody at this time because I have a couple. I want to cut this off as soon as we can, so I'm not going to go into my normal detail. But the one thing I do have that strikes me is as I bike around, we've got and I don't know, for some reason in particular this year, but maybe it just struck me, leaf problems in the streets. And if somehow we can look at doing something, at least with the city of Chanhassen, since we put in $30,000 or some significant amount toward one of those vacuum sweepers, even looking at doing something like what I think it was Forest Lake gave a presentation on their leaf project, and I would like us to look into doing the same. I would think that there's more than just Chanhassen, but around the lakes, it's very, very significant issue. And we got people don't clean up the gutters. It rains, it all runs down into the storm sewer, and we all know where the storm sewer, at least in Chanhassen, ends up with. It either ends up in one of two creeks, but more likely in either Lake Riley or Chanhassen, and that's where that stuff ends up. And I think that's in large part why we have phosphorus issues. And Lake Riley, they're lucky they have zebra mussels to clean it. I don't want zebra mussels, any more zebra mussels in Chanhassen. So I will leave that for now and maybe pick up in December with other items. So thank you.
Okay. Any other managers have a manager report? Seeing none. Administrator.
Mr. President,
Manager Cook?
I just wanted to add to that. I think it was Forest Lake. They even helped contribute toward paying fuel and time to run the ones, and maybe staff could think about well, how much time would it take them to come up with a suggestion, or go get Forest Lakes and say, hey, you want to look at Forest Lake? Tell us to do so, or something like that. So I'm sorry, I just thought of that. So I'm finished. Thank you.
Yeah, I believe you're correct. I know most lakes, if they want to do a good job, they have to schedule multiple cleanups. I know they came by on my street, and the leaves held onto the trees and then fell the next day.
Yeah.
I think if you had the money, you'd probably clean them every day, because during this time of year when it's windy and rain, they come down and they keep coming down until spring. But
Yes,
anyway.
Mr. President, I think one of the things is trying to get out there and clean it before their forecasted rain, so it doesn't go wash down the storm sewers, and I know that's difficult, but one could look at forecasts and say, hey, okay, it's supposed to rain in 2 days or whatever. It takes us 3 days to do it. Let's get going. And if we can help support that, it would save the municipalities a lot of money. Hopefully it would reduce the amount of times we have to do alum treatments or clean out our what do you call those things we were putting in over there by Rice Marsh? The fancy thing with the Krakens. Yeah, the Krakens. Not to be confused with what Sidney Powell used, right? I'm finished. Thank you.
This is regular managers. Actually, I would kind of like to speak to this. Yeah, there's been a lot of work out there that is demonstrating the efficacy of street sweeping and relating to canopy coverage, timing of the year, and when they get the most efficient removals from that. I had been in conversations with Joe Seidel about this last fall, actually, and he was going to be putting together a street sweeping plan, because MPCA has also started to recognize it as a best practice that cities can use to be compliant with their MS4. So I will circle back with Joe Seidel at the city and see where they're at with it and what obstacles they might have. But
that'd be great.
So Mr. Smith put in a note about a person that was working with Comfort Lake, Forest Lake, is now working with the city of Edina. So if he's got the contact, I know they were doing some forecasting and studies of which streets should be priorities too, which Administrator Jeffrey also alluded to, because some streets are obviously a lot worse than others.
Yeah, I can reach out. Go ahead.
Ziegler.
Manager Kraft.
So Terry, did Ross Bittner do a presentation at the Water Resource Conference on that?
President Ziegler, Manager Kraft, and you just read my mind. That's what I was about to say when we both spoke up at the same time. Yeah, so I could reach out to Ross and get the information he has as well.
Okay.
Good. Do any other managers have manager reports? Okay, moving on, the administrator report.
President Ziegler, managers, I just have one thing I'd like to talk to you about. As you are all probably painfully aware, it seems every year we gain some traction on the chloride legislation, and then it just dies either in committee or doesn't even make it to committee. Smith Partners has been working with a number of different watershed organizations, working on drafting legislation to help move it across the finish line. I would like us to sign on as a financial contributor to this effort, thinking in the range of $3,000, which we have available in our outreach budget. I do think it would be a good expenditure of that money. So with that, I mean, it's in my purview to do that, but I would really like the managers blessing, I guess, for lack of a better word.
I'm in favor of that. $3,000 is a small amount to keep salt out of our lakes. I see. Okay.
Well, Mr. President.
Manager Cook.
Well, I don't take this the wrong way, but I think that's probably one of the better ways we could spend our money for immediate bang for the buck. And while we're on that topic, I didn't want to go into a bunch of stuff, manager's report, but I think I really would like us to see in E&O to make a concerted effort to get information notices out to our residents, whether it be salt, on that basis, or whether it be permitting, like, don't throw a bunch of stuff in the lake or, whatever it is, but really try to utilize those city communication pieces, if at all possible, and work with realtors, whatever it is that we can try to get the word out. I mean, maybe you have a conference, invite all the new homeowners, for cookies and coffee. I'm being a little facetious, but I think we really, it's great to train the kids, and don't get me wrong, but we got an awful lot of adults out there that we got to get the message across. And I really would like to see our E&O focus on how do we get the messages we need to get to these adults on these issues. And SALT is but one of them, and Leaves is another. And like I said, cities already do the publications, and it even costs us money to put stuff in there. I think it'd probably be good use of our dollars. So I'm finished. Thank you.
Manager Duvall, did you have a opinion on the $3,000 for the SALT?
I think that's a great idea.
Manager Crafton?
Yes, I agree.
Okay.
It might be even, I don't know how much postcards cost, but if we could get people to send a postcard to the legislator on behalf of reducing that, or that for the legislation. I don't know if that's allowed or not, but
Can managers see my photograph?
Yes.
That is the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency's parking lot today.
Which is also Bowser's parking lot.
Yeah, my street doesn't look that bad, but there's still rocks out there, and it's, the snow is long gone.
Salt is everywhere.
All right.
I'll
Well,
have to bring that up at the next board meeting.
yeah, Maryland's right. Lake winds.
Doesn't this go along with the old adage about the cobbler's shoes? Take care of the family first before you start preaching to somebody else. So I think that's those pictures would actually be good publicity. We can say we all are in this together and nobody's free of guilt.
Yeah.
Administrator Jeffrey, is there any more with the administrative report?
Nope. We've talked about everything. Thanks.
Okay, the legal counsel report.
Managers, I have only one thing to just generally let you know, and any more detail, we'd probably go into closed session on the Friends of the Spring lawsuit. There's a proposal that's being discussed to stay that lawsuit pending the outcome of the Spring Road project. But there's no specific proposal to bring to you yet, but you can just be aware of that.
Thank you. Do any of the managers have questions or comments? Hearing none, the next item is upcoming board topics.
President Ziegler, managers, there is one. Rod Fisher brought it up earlier in the day at the December workshop. I'd like to bring forward. Joe Bischoff from BAR has put together a scope for the holistic lake management plan. We'll go through that with the managers.
Thank you. And that would be applicable to Duck Lake or any other lake in the watershed?
It would be analogous, but
Analogous.
wouldn't directly, you couldn't just take it from one and put it in the other.
Okay.
But it would be the type of work, yes.
Mr.
Great.
President,
Yes, Mr. Manager Duvall.
question for Administrator Jeffrey. The EHAP, what's the follow-up going to be on that in terms of reporting and follow-up, I guess, in terms of where that's at, where it's going?
So President Ziegler, Manager
Yes.
Duvall, that would be worked into our workshops for the spring, as we really need to start getting the board involved in one, what are our goals and missions, because that's going to frame everything. And then two, what do you see as being what's needed in the EHAP? So We'll be coming back to you after the holiday break, and that's when we'll start in earnest working with the board on developing the plan.
Thank you.
Okay, so the next item is the upcoming events, and we've already talked about the MN Watershed Annual Conference. Were there any other events? That's the only one listed.
President Ziegler, managers. No, we're pretty much reaching the end of the year. We just had the Minnesota Water Resources Conference, the Midwest Climate Resilience Conference, Scott Sobiek's up at Floodplain Conference, which sounds exciting. So yeah, we're winding down the end of the year. We hosted a SALT training at our offices today. There'll be more coming up with that.
Good. So the last thing on the agenda is adjourn. Is there anything we missed?
No, Mr. President,
Manager Cook?
I move that we continue this meeting
Good point.
until 5:30 on Monday, November the 6th.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any questions? Hearing none, Mr. Smith, can we have a roll call vote?
Manager Crafton,
Yes,
Manager Duval,
Yes.
Manager Cook,
Yes.
Manager Pedersen,
Yes.
President Ziegler.
Yes.
This
Motion
is a
carries
record.
5-0.
Thank
Bye.
you. Thank you, everyone. Have a good
Thank you,
evening.
everybody.
good night.
Talk to you on Monday.